All right, ready to unlock the secrets of your brain.
Sounds exciting.
Today, we're going deep into the cerebral cortex,
The cerebral cortex.
using this incredible physiology handout by Dr. Rasha Eldeeb.
Oh, wow.
She's an associate professor of medical physiology.
So we're in good hands.
Yeah, we're in good hands here. By the end of this deep dive, you'll understand how different parts of your cerebral cortex work.
Yeah.
You'll know the complex functions that they control, and even learn about what happens if these areas are damaged.
That's incredible.
Pretty cool, huh?
It is.
I'm ready to have my mind blown.
Me too.
But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
let's start with the basics.
Basics.
What is the cerebral cortex?
It's the outermost layer of your brain,
Outermost.
and it's responsible for all of those higher level functions that we associate with human intelligence.
Like
language, memory, reasoning,
reasoning.
and even consciousness itself.
Wow.
If the brain is a computer,
Okay.
the cerebral cortex is the super sophisticated processing unit.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
And Dr. Eldeeb's handout calls it the highest brain center, which I thought was pretty cool.
Interesting.
Saying that all the other brain centers kind of take their cues from the cerebral cortex.
It's quite the responsibility.
It's a lot of responsibility for one part of the brain
Yeah.
to understand how it manages all of that.
Yeah.
We need to talk about the two main types of cortex, allocortex and neocortex.
Okay, so allocortex, that's the more ancient part.
The more ancient part, yeah.
It handles our basic instincts,
Okay.
like our sense of smell and survival.
Yes, that's a smell.
So it's the part of the brain that triggers our fight or flight response
Oh,
when we sense danger.
I see. And so that's the primal keep us alive part.
Right.
What about the neocortex?
The neocortex is what truly sets humans apart from other animals.
Oh, wow.
It's massively expanded in us
Okay.
compared to other animals, and it's responsible for all of our higher level thinking.
Higher level thinking.
So that's things like learning new skills, making complex decisions,
Complex decisions.
and even contemplating the meaning of life.
So the neocortex is letting us do this right now.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
And get this, the neocortex is incredibly intricate.
Okay.
It has 6 distinct layers, each with its own unique types of neurons and functions.
Wow. And Dr. Eldeeb mentioned that one layer, layer 4, is particularly important
Yes.
for receiving sensory information from the outside world.
It's like a high-speed internet connection,
Oh, wow.
relaying data from our eyes, ears, and skin to other parts of the brain.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And the neocortex is also folded into those characteristic wrinkles we see on the surface of the brain.
Right, those folds.
Yeah.
They're called sulci,
Sulci.
and they're crucial because they increase the surface area of the brain,
Oh, wow.
packing in even more processing power.
So it's like crumpling up a piece of paper to fit more into a small box.
A great analogy.
Yeah.
And those folds and wrinkles, they create a pattern that's as individual as a fingerprint.
So no two brains are alike.
Exactly.
That is mind-blowing.
It is, yeah.
How do scientists even begin to understand what all these different areas of the neocortex do?
Well, an early pioneer was a scientist named Corbinian Brodmann.
Brodmann.
He meticulously studied the cellular structure of the cortex and mapped out distinct areas based on their characteristics.
Based on their characteristics.
Yeah, so he identified 52 distinct areas, known as Brodmann's areas.
52.
And his work was revolutionary
Wow.
for its time.
So it's like having a detailed map of a vast, uncharted territory?
Exactly.
That must have been a monumental task.
It really was.
And while our understanding has advanced significantly since his time,
For sure.
his map still serves as a foundation.
As a foundation.
Yeah, for modern neuroscience.
That's quite impressive.
It really is. It's incredible to think about how much progress we've made
Yeah.
in unraveling the mysteries of the brain.
So much more to uncover, though.
There is.
Yeah.
Dr. Eldeeb's handout mentions this idea of the cortex as being like a 3-part symphony.
A 3-part symphony.
Yeah, what are these 3 parts and how do they work together?
Imagine the cortex as an orchestra, but instead of instruments, it has specialized areas called sensory, motor, and association areas.
Okay.
And each plays a critical role in how we interact with the world around us.
All right, let's break down the orchestra.
The orchestra.
What do the sensory areas do?
The sensory areas are the input centers of the brain.
The input centers.
That's where we receive and process information from the outside world
Okay,
through our senses.
I see.
Think touch, taste, sight, sound, and even our sense of balance.
Our sense of balance.
These areas are packed with specialized neurons called granule cells.
The granule cell.
That are incredibly efficient at receiving and interpreting these incoming sensory signals.
So if I'm listening to music,
Okay.
the sound waves travel through my ears, and those signals are sent to the auditory cortex
Exactly.
in my temporal lobe.
That's precisely how it works.
Wow.
And each sense has its own dedicated area within the cortex. For example, the visual cortex in the occipital lobe processes information from our eyes,
From our eyes.
allowing us to see the world around us.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the motor areas?
The motor area?
What role do they play in this symphony?
Think of the motor areas as the percussion section of the orchestra,
Okay.
driving the action.
Driving the action.
These areas are responsible for planning, initiating, and controlling our voluntary movements.
Voluntary movements.
They're dominated by pyramidal cells,
Pyramidal cells.
which are shaped like tiny pyramids,
Oh, cool.
and they send signals down the spinal cord to our muscles,
To our muscles.
telling them when and how to move.
So when I decide to reach for my coffee cup,
Yes,
that command originates in my motor cortex.
you got it.
And just like the sensory cortex,
Okay,
different parts of the motor cortex control different parts of the body.
different parts.
There's a fascinating map in the motor cortex
a map?
that represents our entire body laid out in a very specific way.
Wait, there's a tiny map of my body inside my brain.
It is pretty wild.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and this map isn't just a random arrangement.
Okay.
It's organized in a way that reflects the complexity and precision of the movements that we can make.
So we'll dive into that map a little bit later.
Definitely.
But before we get there,
Yeah.
what about those silent but brilliant association areas?
Ah, yes, the association areas.
What role do they play?
Think of those as the woodwind and brass sections of the orchestra,
Okay.
adding depth and richness to the symphony.
They're just vibing.
They are.
So these areas don't directly process sensory input or control movement.
Right.
Instead, they connect the sensory and motor areas,
That's right.
allowing for higher level thinking.
Exactly.
So they're like the conductors of the orchestra,
That's a great way to put it.
bringing everything together.
Yeah, so the association areas allow us to make sense of the world, form memories, solve problems,
Solve problems.
and engage in abstract thought.
Abstract. It's the bridge between sensation and action.
Between sensation and action.
And they're what make us who we are.
Wow, so it's in these association areas
Yeah,
that we make decisions, plan for the future, and come up with creative ideas.
exactly. And these areas are incredibly complex,
They are.
with intricate networks of neurons that are still not fully understood.
Wow, that's incredible.
But one thing is clear, they are essential
Okay.
for our unique human capabilities.
This is blowing my mind.
I don't know, it's fascinating.
It sounds like these association areas are the key to unlocking our full potential
They very well could do.
as humans.
Right.
Well, this has already been so fascinating,
I agree.
and I can't wait to dive deeper
Me too.
into these different areas of the cortex
Right.
and learn more about how they work.
It's going to be a great deep dive.
It really is. I'm still buzzing from all that fascinating information about the cerebral cortex.
Me too.
It's incredible to think about how much is going on inside our heads.
It really is.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Just scratch the surface.
There's so much more to uncover.
Yeah, like those maps in the brain.
Oh, you mean those body maps in the sensory and motor areas?
Exactly.
Tell me more.
Okay, so
I find it so intriguing that different parts of our bodies have their own little dedicated real estate up there.
it is pretty remarkable. The more we study these maps, the
Yeah.
more we realize how specialized they are.
Yeah.
Like, take the somatosensory cortex, for example.
Okay, the somatosensory cortex.
It's not just a simple map of where on the body we're feeling something.
What do you mean? Isn't that the whole point of the somatosensory cortex?
Well, yeah, it does that,
Yeah.
but it goes much deeper.
Deeper.
The somatosensory cortex also tells us how we're being touched.
Ah.
It helps us distinguish between the different types of touch, like pressure, temperature, texture, and even pain.
Wait, so there are different neurons in the somatosensory cortex that specialize in different types of touch.
Exactly.
Wow.
Think about it this way. You can easily tell the difference between a gentle caress and a firm handshake, right?
Right.
That's because different neurons in your somatosensory cortex are firing
Fiery.
in response to those different stimuli.
Huh?
Some neurons are highly sensitive to light touch,
Light touch.
while others respond more to deep pressure or vibrations.
So it's like having a whole team of touch specialists
Yes,
in our brains,
a whole team.
each with their own expertise.
Exactly. And this level of specialization
Okay.
allows us to interact with the world in a much more nuanced and meaningful way.
It makes you realize just how much we rely on these intricate sensory processes
I know, right?
without even thinking about it.
Without even thinking about it.
Yeah, and this same principle of specialization
Okay.
applies to the motor cortex as well.
To the motor cortex.
Remember how we discussed the primary motor cortex, premotor area, and supplementary motor area?
Yes.
Each plays a unique role in controlling our movements.
They do, but it's important to remember that these three areas don't work in isolation.
They don't.
They're constantly communicating and collaborating
Okay.
to produce those smooth, coordinated movements.
So it's like a well-choreographed dance between these different areas.
Exactly.
Like well-choreographed dance.
Imagine you're reaching for your coffee cup again.
Okay, reaching for the coffee.
The decision to reach might originate in a higher level area of your brain,
Okay.
like the prefrontal cortex,
Prefrontal cortex.
which is involved in planning and decision making.
So the prefrontal cortex says, I need caffeine.
Exactly.
Got it.
That intention is then relayed to the premotor area,
Motor.
which starts planning the sequence of movements needed to reach for that cup.
Okay.
It takes into account your current posture,
Posture.
the location of the cup, and any obstacles in the way.
So the premotor area is like the navigator,
It is.
mapping out the best route to the coffee.
I like that analogy.
And once the plan is in place,
Right.
the premotor area signals the supplementary motor area
The supplementary motor area.
to get ready for action.
It does.
So it's like setting the stage
Setting the stage.
for a performance.
Exactly. So the supplementary motor area might adjust your posture,
Adjust the posture.
tense certain muscles,
Okay.
and prepare you for those precise movements needed to grasp the cup.
Like getting into the starting blocks.
Yes.
Before a race.
For a race. And then finally,
Yeah.
that signal goes to the primary motor area.
It does.
The primary motor area is the final stop.
I think stop.
On this journey, it receives that detailed plan from the premotor and supplementary motor areas
Okay.
and sends those final commands down the spinal cord to your muscles.
To the muscles.
To the muscles.
It's amazing how much coordination is happening
Yeah.
behind the scenes of even the simplest actions.
Of even the simplest actions.
Yeah, but there's another important player
There is.
in this motor control symphony that we need to mention,
Okay.
and that is the cerebellum.
Ah, yes. The cerebellum.
I've always been a bit fuzzy
A bit fuzzy.
on what it actually does.
Well, the cerebellum is often called the little brain
Little brain.
because it sits at the back of the brain,
Okay.
below the cerebrum.
Below the cerebrum.
And despite its size, it's incredibly important
Yeah.
for motor control.
So what's its role in all of this?
Think of the cerebellum as the brain's quality control department for movement.
Quality control.
It receives a copy of the motor commands sent from the motor cortex,
Okay.
and it also receives constant feedback
Hey, baby.
from the sensory systems about how the movement is actually being carried out.
So it's like a feedback loop.
Exactly.
Constantly monitoring and fine-tuning our movements.
Constantly monitoring.
So if I'm trying to learn a new dance move and I keep stepping on my partner's toes,
Aha, yes.
my cerebellum is working overtime to help me get it right.
It is. It helps us refine our motor skills through practice and feedback,
Okay.
making us more graceful and coordinated over time.
That makes so much sense.
Aha.
I never realized the cerebellum played such a crucial role in motor learning.
It's a true powerhouse.
A powerhouse.
And it's not just involved in movement.
Oh,
Recent research suggests
okay.
that the cerebellum also plays a role in other cognitive functions,
Like what?
like attention, language processing, and even emotional regulation.
The cerebellum is even more impressive than I thought.
It really is.
It's like the unsung hero of the brain, quietly working in the background
in the background.
to keep everything running smoothly.
To keep everything running smooth. And it just highlights
Yeah.
the interconnected nature of the brain,
Yeah.
that different areas are constantly communicating and collaborating
Communicating and
to
collaborating.
reduce our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Well, this has been fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm eager to get back to those language center
Language center?
that we talked about earlier.
Right.
Broca's area and Wernicke's area.
Yeah, Broca's and Wernicke's.
What more can you tell us about how they work?
Well, as we mentioned, Broca's area is involved in speech production,
Speech production.
while Wernicke's area is crucial for language comprehension.
For language comprehension.
But they don't operate in isolation either.
Oh, okay.
They're connected by a bundle of nerve fibers
Nerve fibers.
called the arcuate fasciculus.
The arcuate fasciculus. So it's like a high-speed communication highway
It is.
between these two language centers.
Between those two centers, this connection allows information to flow
Okay.
back and forth
Back and forth.
between Broca's area and Wernicke's area,
Okay.
enabling us to speak and understand language fluently.
That makes sense. So when I'm listening to someone speak,
Yeah,
the information travels from my ears to Wernicke's area to process the meaning.
right.
And then it's sent along this highway to Broca's area to formulate a response.
That's a great
And it's
summary.
not just a one-way street.
Not a one-way street.
There's a constant dialogue
Constant dialogue
happening between these two areas as we process language.
as we process language.
So it's like a dance between speaking and understanding,
It is
with Broca's area and Wernicke's area taking the lead.
taking the lead.
But there's another layer to this language story that we need to consider,
We do.
and that is the role of the left and right hemispheres.
Oh, the hemispheres.
We talked earlier about how the left hemisphere is typically dominant for language processing.
It is.
Does that mean our right brain is completely silent during conversations?
Not at all.
Not at all.
While the left hemisphere might be the language specialist,
Okay.
the right hemisphere plays a vital role in understanding the more nuanced aspects of communication,
Like what?
like tone of voice, facial expressions, and body language.
So it's like the right brain is reading between the lines,
Yes,
helping us understand the emotional subtext of what's being said.
exactly. The right hemisphere helps us grasp the speaker's intentions
Okay.
and emotional state, adding depth and richness to our understanding of language.
It's amazing how these two hemispheres work together
It is.
to give us this complete picture
Complete picture.
of what's being communicated.
It really is a remarkable partnership.
It is.
And it just highlights how interconnected the brain is.
Yeah.
Different areas, even across hemispheres, are constantly communicating and collaborating
That's
to
interesting.
produce our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
This is mind-blowing.
It is.
I'm starting to see the brain as this incredibly complex
It is a
and
complex.
dynamic network
Yes.
with
Yep.
all these different areas,
All right.
specializing in different tasks, but always working together.
Always working together.
That's really cool.
It really is.
We've been on quite a journey exploring the intricate workings of this remarkable part of the brain.
It really is a marvel of nature.
I'm still reeling from all the fascinating information about the different areas of the cortex and how they communicate with each other.
I know, right? And we've only just begun to uncover its secrets.
I'm ready for more.
Okay.
One thing that really struck me
Yeah.
was this idea of neuroplasticity,
Neuroplasticity
the brain's ability to change and adapt throughout our lives.
throughout our lives.
It's amazing to think that our brains are constantly rewiring themselves
They are
based on our experiences.
It's one of the most remarkable features of the brain,
It is.
and it plays a crucial role in learning and memory.
Learning and memory.
Every time we learn something new,
Okay.
form a new memory, or have a novel experience,
Yeah.
our brains are physically changing.
Physically change.
At the microscopic level.
So it's not just a metaphor
No.
to say that learning something new changes our brains.
Right.
It's literally happening.
Absolutely. When we learn the connections between neurons in our brains,
Okay.
called synapses,
Synapses.
they're strengthened or weakened.
Okay.
This process is called synaptic plasticity,
Synaptic plasticity.
and it's the foundation of learning and memory.
Wow. So it's like our brains are constantly being sculpted by our experiences.
That's a great way to put it.
And this plasticity isn't just limited to learning new things.
No.
It also helps us recover from brain injuries.
It does.
Remember how we talked about the somatosensory cortex rewiring itself after someone loses a finger?
I do.
That's neuroplasticity in action.
It is. It's quite amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
Dr. Eldeeb's handout also mentioned something called the general interpretative area,
Yes,
or Wernicke's area. Is this the same Wernicke's area
it is.
we talked about earlier?
It is.
Involved in language comprehension.
The term general interpretative area is just another way of describing Wernicke's area.
Okay.
It just highlights the broader role this region plays in our cognitive abilities.
So it's not just about understanding language.
It's not just about language, no.
What other functions does it have?
Well, while Wernicke's area is crucial for deciphering the meaning of words and sentences,
Okay.
it also seems to play a key role in integrating information from different senses.
From different senses.
So think of it as a central hub where sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touch sensations come together
They all come together.
to form a coherent understanding of our surroundings.
So it's like the brain's grand central station,
It is.
where all the sensory information arrives and gets sorted out.
Exactly. And it's not just about sensory information either.
Okay.
Wernicke's area also helps us make connections between ideas.
between ideas.
linking abstract thoughts and concepts.
So it's like the area where we make sense of the world,
Exactly.
both the physical world around us and the world of ideas inside our heads.
I like that, and it's fascinating to consider how this area has evolved in humans.
Yeah.
Our ability to understand complex language and abstract thought is one of the things that truly sets us apart from other species.
It really does. And speaking of differences between species,
Yes.
Dr. Eldeeb's handout also talks about hemispheric specialization,
Hemispheric specialization.
the idea that the two halves of our brain have different strengths.
Different strengths.
Is it true that some people are more left-brained
Hmm.
and others are more right-brained?
That's a popular idea, but it's important not to oversimplify it. Okay.
While there's some truth to the concept of hemispheric specialization,
Yeah.
both hemispheres work together constantly.
Okay.
It's not like one side is completely dominant over the other.
So what are some of the specializations that each hemisphere has?
Well, the left hemisphere is often associated with language processing,
Language processing.
logical thinking,
Logical thinking.
and analytical skills.
Okay.
It's the side of the brain that excels at breaking down complex information into smaller pieces
Okay.
and analyzing them systematically.
So if I'm trying to solve a math problem or write a detailed report,
Yes.
my left hemisphere is probably taking the lead.
That's a good way to think about it.
Cool. What about the right hemisphere?
The right hemisphere is often linked to spatial awareness,
Visual awareness.
creativity, recognizing faces, and processing emotions.
Recognizing faces.
It's the side of the brain that sees the bigger picture, makes intuitive leaps,
Mm-hmm.
and connects with the emotional nuances of the world.
So if I'm painting a picture.
Or trying to read someone's body language.
Exactly.
That's my right hemisphere at work.
Exactly. But again, it's important to remember that both hemispheres are constantly communicating and working together.
Together.
They complement each other beautifully.
It's like having two brilliant collaborators working together inside our heads.
I love that analogy.
Me too.
And it highlights how extraordinary the human brain truly is.
It does.
The cerebral cortex, with its intricate networks of neurons, specialized areas, and constant communication.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the power of evolution and the remarkable potential of the human mind.
This has been an incredible journey.
It has been.
I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the amazing complexity and power of my own brain.
Good. I'm glad.
Thank you for guiding us to this deep dive into the cerebral cortex.
It's been my pleasure, and I hope this inspires everyone listening to continue exploring the fascinating world of neuroscience.
I hope so too.
There's still so much more to discover
There is.
about this incredible organ that makes us who we are.
Well, on that note, it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the cerebral cortex.
Okay.
I hope you enjoyed this exploration as much as we have.
I did.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.
Keep 'em buzzing.